Jack and I have been Davey since high school. I remember when he first asked me out, our junior year. I was thrilled. I've been crushed on him for as long as I could remember. He was one of my best friends. Of course, I said yes, and the rest was history. We were high school sweethearts, him and I. And we made it through college, even though we went to separate schools. We really loved each other, and everyone could see it. Once we both graduated, he got a job first, and we all home together. Our lives were just beginning, and I was excited to see where life took us. No matter what happened, I was sure that we had get through it together. We lived in this house for a few months. When we took it all, we both went to dinner after and told each other that this was the first house we felt we could make a home. We could raise a family here, and told him, and he agreed. When we moved in and started to put our possessions in it, we both realized we'd been spot on. This was our home. Then as the months passed and we spent more time there, it only strengthened that feeling. It was March. It was still chill in the air, but the flowers outside were beginning to bloom. Our anniversary was tomorrow. It would be 7 years of us being together. I hoped that maybe we would propose on dinner dates. Now that we had a home together, we were financially sound, at least the north, and we were ready starting out. I didn't want to get myself too excited. Oh, he did seem nervous this week. Maybe he would propose. I had news for him too. News I had been holding on to for a while. I don't want to tell him right away, just in case he did want to propose. I didn't want to pressure him, you know? I had only found out a week or two before, so we could wait. I knew it would make him happy, when I couldn't wait to see his beautiful smile he gets when he's excited. It was indescribable. He was at work that day, so I cleaned the house up. I organized everything and tried to make it as peaceful as I could. I'd been doing some shopping to make our house even more of a home, and I couldn't wait to show the results. Just in time for 7 years together. Just in time for our new beginnings to come. The house was clean, peaceful, so I decided to sit on the porch. I wanted to pour myself a glass of wine. I really did. I couldn't. I hate to admit it, but that was the hardest part. James and I liked to have fun, and I'm not saying we couldn't without drinking. It was meant to share a drink with the love of I lie. I waited for him on the porch in a beautiful weather, with a slight nick in the air. As it got darker and the sun began to set, I went back inside. He came in a few minutes later. I smiled at the sight of him, going up to him to give him a kiss. He kissed me back, and then, as he pulled away, held onto my shoulders, smiling at me. I no fear, he said, almost entranced by me. I need you to know that. Of course I know that, I said, smiling and giggling as over-dramatized statement. I love you too, dummy. We eventually went to the kitchen to eat dinner together. He wanted to talk about anything and everything. He wanted to have a night to remember, he said. So, and told him we would. We ate and laughed and had a great time before deciding to watch a nude together. We sat on the couch, did the 2-hour movie, a horror movie, and he held me in his arms. When the movie ended, we sat there in the darkness with the only light coming from the candle that lit. They vaguely illuminated our home, for the light they did make was beautiful. He still held me in his arms. He didn't speak. I could tell that he wanted to speak, but he didn't. That made me curious and sly. I looked at him, and he looked back. They stared into his beautiful green eyes, the most peaceful eyes I'd ever looked into. In them, I saw our lives together. I saw our past, the first day we met and every day since then. I saw our future together. I smiled. This was a night that I would, Fernanda. It was right. Everything seemed beautiful and perfect, and I never wanted to leave the picturesque moment I was in. Hey, James's low, grumbly voice said as he stared down at me. "I'm something I have to do." "What's that?" I asked, curious. He stood up from the couch and let me out to his arms, breaking the beautiful moment I had wanted to spend the rest of my days in. He didn't leave, though. Barely even moved. He stood in front of me. "I was going to do this tomorrow," he said, pulling out a little black box, "but this is right." Tears came to my eyes. I knew what was happening. I was right. He was going to propose. A smile, larger than any smile I'd ever had before, carved itself into my face. My cheeks bloomed into budding roses. I chuckled to myself, briefly and happily, and waited for him to say the 4 words I'd wanted to hear from him since the moment we met. He got down on one knee and opened the box to reveal the most beautiful ring I'd ever seen. It shone in the darkness, almost illuminating the whole room as it reflected the light of every lit candle. "Mr. Costin the 4G. I gasped in the sight of it. How could I ever be happier? "I have loved you since the moment I met you," he said, and the words escaped off of his tongue effortlessly. "And I'll never stop, no matter what, every day, every hour, every minute, for the rest of your life. No, but I love you." "I love you too," I chumped out, tearfully, and smiled on him. "Would you marry me?" he asked, saying the 4 words I'd been waiting for. "Yes," I said. "Of course I will." He slipped the ring over my finger, and from my seated position, I took him into my arms. He held me there for a moment. I never wanted to forget it. I never wanted to leave it. "I have something to tell you too," I said, and he pulled himself out of my arms nervously. "What?" we said. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," I said to him, putting my hands on his shoulders. "I'm pregnant." I finally let the words escape from me, and I saw James's face go blank. A tear slid down his cheek, and he took in my arms as quick as he could. I fell to the floor with him as he kissed me. Everything was happy. Everything was perfect. Phone rang as we held on to each other, but we ignored her. We went to bed together that night, having one of the best nights of our lives. I fell asleep with him. He held me tightly in his arms as if he'd never wanted to let go, as if he was convinced I was not real, and if he let go, I'd simply disappear. I slept peacefully wrapped in his arms. A knock at the door woke me up. It must have been 3 in the morning, maybe 4. I was much too ready for visitant. I was paranoid about answering it, but I didn't see much harm. I had to check and see who it was, even if I wasn't in to answer it, just to be sure. I let James sleep and walked downstairs to open the door. I stared out the peephole first, just in case, but to my surprise there were a police officer standing outside. Would somebody get hurt? Messing? Was there somebody bad in our neighborhood that I had to worry about? I quickly swung the door open and, in the moment realizing that I was only wearing James's t-shirt, greeted the cop, embarrassed. He stared me up and down and had a sad look on his face. I grew concerned. "Is everything okay, officer?" I asked him. "What brings you here at this time of night?" "Nan," started, "I'm sorry to bother you at this time of night." "It's alright." "Is everything okay?" I asked again, growing more and more concerned. "Something to foul on." "I'm so sorry. I have to tell you that your boyfriend passed away tonight. We found his car just off the side of the road. There was an accident and that can't be," interrupted him in disbelief, my whole world crossing before me. "That's impossible." "I'm sorry for your losses, but there was any way that you could identify the body. No," I'd come off again tearfully. No. It was just here last night." "Sorry," he said. "You don't understand, you have the wrong house," I said. "I don't. You were his emergency contact." "He came home last night," I argued, knowing that what I experienced was real. I wasn't crazy. "And he must have left again," the officer replied, trying to calm me down to no avail. "He can't be dead." My voice broke as I spoke. "I was just with him." "He is," Nif said. "I'm so sorry." I frantically fought through everything as the tears ran down my cheeks. He couldn't be dead. He was here. We spent the night together. We ate, we watched a movie, we got engaged. Wasn't dead. It couldn't be. As I looked outside my door, just behind the officer, I saw that James's car wasn't in the driveway. He hadn't come home last leg. Pretty hot. I knew the officer thought I was just in shock, for as I processed what he was saying in disbelief, I knew I could prove to it. I turned to him. If he's dead, I started as tears fell from my eyes. And who's in my bedroom? I asked myself. The cop, upon overhearing this, let his face drop. I heard the footsteps slowly approaching behind me. I knew that he could see James too. Chill came down my spine as I heard the footsteps, and I watched the officer's face turn pale. The steps stopped in their tracks. Babe, James said, turning my body cold as ice. What's wrong? Bee's at the door. Years ago, I lived in a condo with my two dogs, Smokey and the Bandit, brother and sister in the same litter that I got as puppies. For reference, their mother was a Sheltie, Smokey's father was a German Shepherd, and Bandit's was a Husky. They were both a good size, with long, thick coats, which made them look a lot bigger than they actually were. Personality-wise, they were both big babies, who loved people. They carry attention, and was happily licky to death given a chance. The night I got home like 2:30ish, I took her out for a run and a pee, something I'd done many times. And even the backside of the condo on the ground level and backyard with a huge park-like setting divided up by intersecting pathways, kind of like a square with 4 quadrants, surrounded by other condos for houses. The area right in front of my condo is a big field with a pathway about halfway through, running parallel to the condo. To the left of that was an area around the same size, divided up between a large playground area and a forested area over the pathway running through it. I headed straight out of my condo and across the pathway that divided into the big open field. I'd noticed someone, a tall, skinny man, dressed in all black, whistling while walking on the path I'd crossed over. As I ran with the dogs, I noticed the whistling stopped, so I looked over the shoulder and saw the man had diverted off the path, was now walking in a direct line towards me. I immediately falls, oh shit, this can't be good, and took a hard left and run into the playground area. It was well lit, but there's also a huge man-made hill I assume is leftover dirt from when something was built that had become grass covered. I ran around the hill into the dark where he wouldn't be able to see me. I stayed there for a minute to formulate my words of the clan. Luckily, I knew the area very well, having spent hours walking everywhere with the dogs. The playground was bordered on one side by the forest area, so I crept through the trees to where the path led through, circling back to my condo. Keeping close to the shadowed area, while hoping and praying I'd lost him, or he'd lost interest. The forested area ends basically where the backyard of my condo begins. Still hidden, I looked around the open area and couldn't see anyone. I needed to wait for it, as desert wooding like hell. Up to this point, it was just like any other walk my dogs who had happily galloped along beside me the entire time, seemingly unaware of any danger. As I left the protection of the forest, I saw the fucker jump out of a nearby group of bushes. I had a good head start on him, but I didn't know how fast the fucker was, so I scared wouldn't, but looking back. What happened next still amazes me to this day. As I was running, the dog still at my side, Slokey, the female, all of a sudden stopped dead in her tracks, turned around, assumed the don't fuck would be boy stunts, and started snarling and growling at the footbear which stopped him dead in his tracks. Bandit, the male, stuck right by my side like glue until we got to my patio. I turned and looked back and almost laughed at the fucker. Smokey was still standing aground in full on guard dog mood, and he was standing there looking at her, hands up, in surrender. I called Smokey, and she backed away slowly, barking and growling, until she decided it was good, then turned around and ran right back through me. I kept my eyes on the fucker the entire time. He never moved until the dogs and I went back inside, which we did as soon as smoke was out there. I immediately called 911, and within minutes, the entire backyard was swallowing the pots. The coffee went sufficiently, Seth been knew was pours sexual assaults in our area, and they'd figured it was the same guy. Unfortunately, other than turn, skinny, and wearing all black, I had zero info on what he looked like. I don't know David Compton or anything more about it. Whenever it was gone, I had a good long cuddle with my wonder dogs, complete with them nicking away my tears. After the adrenaline and everything wore off, the gravity of what could have happened and how done lucky I was finally hey. For the record, I'd done lots of different modes of training with them, then never anything that involved protection. What they did was 100% instinct, but I didn't even know they had in them. This happened during the early 2000s. I was living at the crack house in Vermont. There were a lot of people coming and going on a regular basis, doing drugs, selling drugs, buying drugs. One of the people then visited was part of a bike again called the Green Mountain Boys. We used to chill out with him and smoke weed. He was really chatty and bragged about things I neither wanted to hear nor needed to hear, and frankly, he probably wasn't allowed to talk about. But I didn't stop him. On one occasion, we visited a trailer park where one of the veteran members of the bike gang was. We sat down in his kitchen to smoke some weed. My crackhead landlady told him about his younger gang member being a chatty Cathy. He listened quietly, looked at me and said, "Can you corroborate what she's telling me?" "Yeah, man, absolutely. Dude shows up at least once a week and tells us about what y'all are up to here." The old man looked at me with squinted eyes and shook his finger, saying, "I'm gonna look into this. You're right, that boy is going missing. You understand me? So be sure you're telling me the truth. If I end up taking care of this kid, and we found out later you're bullshitting me, I will bury you next." I had a sinking feeling in my chest. I was definitely telling the truth, but I didn't want to be responsible for someone going missing, and I also didn't want to convince him that I was lying. I was like, "Look, I don't want to get involved. Just ignore what I said." He was funded. Too late. I'll be in touch. I was pretty freaked out. I was also pissed because the crackhead skank next to me run her mouth and told him I was there. I just verified she wasn't lying, but now I'm on the hook. Fast forward a few months. I'm cleared out my life. Quit doing drugs. I was only smoking a bit of weed and occasionally using mushrooms, and started exercising. I've been accepted into the Air Force and was getting ready to do something positive in my life. One day, I came back from meeting with the recruiter, and my roommate said, "Hey man, he desperate looking for you. Shut up 3 times since the smaller." Like that? Huh? I haven't spoken to him in like 3 years. How does he know where I live? No clue, man. He was just really hell-bent on talking with you. What did he look like? I asked. Old dude, beard, pen tattoos, denim jacket. That's the link, Dad. Oh, freaks. I knew who he was describing. The fact when the biker showed up with bad news. The fact that he showed up 3 times means he was determined to catch up to me. The fact that he pretended to be my father means he was luring me to the door. I never found out what he wanted. I never found out if anything happened to the young biker. I moved out that night and lived in my car until basic train date. Last time I was back in Vermont, the crackhead was still in the house, smoking crack and chumming it over by his. I think I dodged the bullet. Still creeps me out to think about it. I am when we first called the police last night to tell them we hadn't seen our daughter in a few hours. I sobbed over the phone next to my husband, Jack, and begged him to do something for her. She was only 6 years old. The missing for only a few hours meant something's been wrong. It was a small town. We all knew each other and lived in peace for the most part. How could something be wrong? They sent a few officers out, and upon coming to our home, realizing the situation in full, they began to worry too. Our property was large. We lived in a small town, Jack and me. We'd moved there when I got pregnant with Emmy. We wanted to start life anew, and life with a white picket fence in front of our home. So we moved to a small, middle-of-nowhere town and got a big house right in front of the woods. Maybe some people would be displeased by the thought of that simple lifestyle. I'll admit, I used to be. Or afraid of what lurks within the vast woods behind our home. But I never feared them. We would often take walks through the woods as a family. They were beautiful. Emmy was so drawn to adventuring in them, so she was very familiar with them. She could have run out there and find any number of things could have happened to her. We started with sedge posses through the woods, that nothing came up. We searched through every acre of land that we could, but nothing turned up, not one thing, and not footprint, not an article of clothing. Thankfully, not a drip of blood. We couldn't find her out in the woods, where everyone thought she would be found. Next, we had to start to cope with the fact that she could have been taken. We were a close town, and knew all of my neighbors, and they all knew me. Everyone was kind. I always felt safe here. I was sure that nobody in this town could have taken my Emmy from me. So, if somebody had taken her, she must have been long gone. After weeks and weeks of searching to no avail, the case grew cold. The officers promised they would keep looking, but there wasn't much hope in their voices. They tried to hide that from Jack and me, but I was a stupid, and neither was he. They'd given up hope. Unless something turned up, they couldn't keep on look of her in a town that we knew she wasn't in. I remember vividly walking through town after that and seeing all of the missing posters slowly rot and decay on their telephone poles and bulletin boards and storefronts. Nothing bad ever happened in our quaint the little town, so no matter how much time passed, nobody would forget about the tragedy our family had suffered. Flies would fly off from the wind and I'd watch them go by, as townsfolk would come up to me and comfort me, give me words of encouragement. But after the first few weeks, having everyone there for you, he's still in shock. It wasn't until the initial phase passes and you're left alone with what you are facing when you truly face her, the shock wears off, that he come to terms with the reality. I was 10 years ago. My husband still sits by the furnace at times, but he knows there'll never be a call. He loved our little Emmy so much. She was Daddy's logo. She was beautiful and perfect in every way. Her baby blue eyes always stared into his so longingly. They just loved each other so much. I know that he lays by the furnace and lights and waits to hear her voice again, knowing he never will. Jack and I only had each other know. To say before. I sat down there with her one night. It was her birthday. He couldn't sleep after we had celebrated with a cake for her, as we do every year, and watched some old home movies. She would have been 16 today, saying into a woman who carrying her the boys to school and who would ask her to prom. I know he just wanted to see what she would have been, and it killed him not to know. We sat up by the phone, watching one of her favorite Disney movies that we all saw together right before she went missing. As the animation flew across the screen, and we were entranced thinking about her, a loud ring interrupted her. It could have been anyone, but Jack frantically got the phone on the first ring and picked it up. I paused the movie and watched carefully, knowing that I would have to watch the hope drain from my love's eyes once again. It hit me every time I saw it happen. Tears started to roll from his eyes. As I went to comfort him, I noticed they were tears of joy. Now it was impossible. He hung the photo after saying thank you and dropped it to the floor, trembling. They found her, he said to me, tearfully, and knew they could. My body froze. Baby was shock that came over me. I knew that she was dead. She'd been dead for 10 years. I accepted that, and Jack never did. I knew that she's dead. I froze, and tears came to my eyes as Jack ran up to the chair to grab his keys. He grabbed me and led me into his car, and we raced to the station. Upon entering it, we saw her with the same officer who had worked the case all those years ago. Jack ran up to the beautiful blonde girl, embracing her in her arms, and leaving me behind to stand there, paralyzed. I was in disbelief, convinced what I was saying could not be real. I wondered if she remembered me, if she remembered who I was. After witnessing the tearful hug, I saw her pull out a book. She turned to look at me, and the moment I saw the beautiful baby-blue eyes, and knew it was my daughter. There's no doubt it's fault. Tears flowed down her face as she walked up to me, slowly. Did she remember? "Mom," she said, her voice breaking and shaky. I stared at this beautiful girl in front of me, dumbfounded, for a moment before responding. I felt as if my voice could not escape from me. "Baby," they jumped out to her. Without responding, she collapsed in my arms, sobbing. I stood there frozen for a moment, unsure of how to react to this shocking discovery. I for a moment wrapped my arms around her, clutching her like any loving, grieving mother would due to her missing, newly found child. A tear came to my eye silently and raced down my cheek as I'd exhaled a breath of relief. I thought she was dead. No, I knew she was dead. How was she not? It'd been 10 years. How did she survive? I found out later she had amnesia. She barely remembered anything from when she were missing because of a blow to her head. They didn't know who caused her. Thank God they didn't. And God, I hit her in just the right place. I settled next to Emmy. He barely even knew her name. She didn't remember who her parents were until she saw us again. But meant she couldn't have remembered when I took her out into the woods that night. Struck her across the back of the head with Jack's old metal bats from his baseball days. From when we could be together and live our lives how we wanted, without her getting in the way and making us uproot everything. When all we had was each other, and all we loved with each other. She's upstairs in her old bedroom now. We just got home last night. The neighbors have sent gifts and flowers and food. They've all been so wonderful and supportive. Jack's up there, bringing her breakfast in bed and eating with her, with much more love for her now than he ever had before. Maybe it's because he understands what it's like to lose her. She means even more to him now than ever. And gone will paranoid. I'm afraid a memory will come back. It hasn't yet, but I'm petrified. The second she sees the woods, a cover will be blown. So like I can kill her again. That would look too suspicious, wouldn't it? I made sure everything would work out. I took her to the woods that night, hit her across the head, and drove so far out of town that she could never get back. I threw her body in the lake. I watched as she floated away, lifelessly. Found out that she drowned. For here she is, back again. Where she's sent to police me? Jack came down the stairs to tell me that she wants to see me. His smile is larger than ever now that she's home again. He hasn't swat at me like that since the day we got married, for the day I gave birth to Emmy. It's all he wanted in the world, and he has it now. And nothing. She's a fake. If she was sent here to punish me, but if she was aware what I had done and held until revenged, it wouldn't even care. I'm opening the door to her room now to see her sitting upright in her bed, staring at me with a smile painted on the face. I take a deep breath in preparation for whatever is to come, facing the truth, or having to hide behind a mask for the rest of my days until I can figure out what to do with her. If I can't figure out anything, then I'll just live in constant fear of her memory coming back and knowing what happened on that night when I killed her.